So I want to now transition to the Minnesota Vikings. You know, it's around the time of the year where I start making playoff predictions and things of that nature. I'm just going to say this regarding the Minnesota Vikings. Heading into the 2021 season, this is how I feel. I believe the Minnesota Vikings will be a playoff team in 2021. Now, I know what people are already saying. Kirk Cousins. You can't win with Kirk Cousins. I understand the Kirk Cousins criticisms, but Kirk Cousins is a capable starting quarterback, okay? In fact, last year, Kirk Cousins had a pretty solid year. 35 touchdowns to only 13 interceptions, completed 67% of his passes, had a pass rating of 105. Kirk Cousins was pretty good. And you can win games with Kirk Cousins in the National Football League. That's been proven, okay? A couple of years ago, he led Washington to the playoffs. A couple of years ago, the Minnesota Vikings won a playoff game versus Drew Brees and the Saints, a game in which Kirk Cousins actually outplayed Drew Brees in that game, okay? And here's the thing, people. When you look at all these quarterbacks and you look at these teams, when evaluating who's going to make the playoffs, you have to look at the roster in its totality and not just the quarterbacks, okay? The quarterback definitely matters because it's the most important position, okay? But if we were putting teams in the playoffs just based on how good their quarterback is, then Justin Herbert would have made the playoffs last year. Okay? Deshaun Watson would be a lock for the playoffs every single year. But that's not how things work, people. You have to have a well-rounded roster. And the reality is, the Chargers and the Texans, from a roster standpoint, they're just not good enough. They have a great quarterback, but they don't have a great team. And while Minnesota, to me, is their team great or elite? No, but they have a very well-rounded roster, okay? You have to look at the offensive line, the run game, defense, special teams, all that. In Minnesota, they grade out pretty well. You look at Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook is one of the best running backs in all of football, okay? He had a tremendous year last year. And behind him, you have Alexander Madison and Amir Abdullah, two capable running backs if Dalvin Cook gets hurt. You look at the wide receiver position. The Vikings have Justin Jefferson, who to me is going to be a great wide receiver for years to come. Adam Thielen is still really good, still really productive. You know, D.D. Westbrook could be a decent number 3, we'll see. You know, you got Irv Smith at tight end, who could maybe have a breakout season this year. He's in year number 3, and usually year number 3, year number 4 is where tight ends really start to break onto the scene, so we'll see. I do believe the Vikings offensive line will be much improved this year. They drafted Christian Darrisaw in the 2021 draft, along with Wyatt Davis. Ezra Cleveland's coming around. Like a couple of years ago, the Vikings offensive line was just putrid and bad. It's not a great offensive line, but it's competent now. This offensive line is much improved, okay? And last year, the Vikings had the 11th ranked offense. So scoring points wasn't a problem for Minnesota. The problem for Minnesota last year was their defense wasn't very good. They ranked 29th in the league, but the problem was they had a bunch of young guys that they were playing. They had a ton of turnover on defense. They lost so many key players. But now Minnesota, with those players coming back, getting more experience, those players will be better. And not to mention, Minnesota also added Patrick Peterson and Dalvin Tomlinson this past free agency period. Patrick Peterson should definitely help improve that secondary. And Dalvin Tomlinson is one of the most underrated defensive linemen in the NFL. And you look at Mike Hughes. He's going to return this year, coming off an injury-plagued season. Anthony Barr missed a lot of time in 2020. He's going to be back. Danielle Hunter will be back this year. He didn't play last year. He's a game changer on defense. He'll be a guy that improves that defense tremendously. Eric Kendricks is still one of the best middle linebackers in the league. Harrison Smith, Anthony Harris, two really good safeties. Michael Pierce is really good as well. And you look at Mike Zimmer. Mike Zimmer's not a perfect coach, but he's a pretty good head coach. He's capable. 5 of his 7 seasons have been above 500 in Minnesota, and he's won over 57% of his games. So I think Minnesota is honestly one of the more underrated teams in the NFL. I really do firmly believe that. Are they as good as Green Bay? I'm not going to say that, but they'll challenge Green Bay this year. I think they're better than Chicago and Detroit. I think Chicago has questions on the offensive line. Their roster is aging. And Detroit, they're just not very talented. And I don't think Jared Goff is going to tip the scale in Detroit's favor because Jared Goff needs a lot around him to win games. Okay, so I think Minnesota is definitely flying under the radar in 2021. I believe they're going to win anywhere from 10 to 11 games. I say 9 to 11 wins is about right for Minnesota. I think that 10 wins is about the sweet spot. I think that 10 wins will get them into the playoffs. They do have to play a very tough schedule, but I do believe in Minnesota this year. The schedule could hold them back, but it also could benefit them because they're going to play a bunch of teams that they will be competing against to potentially make the playoffs. Like, they'll go head-to-head with Dallas. They'll go head-to-head with Arizona. They'll go head-to-head with Green Bay. You know, they'll go head-to-head with some of these teams that they will be competing with to potentially get a playoff spot. So I think Minnesota, they're an underrated team this year. I believe Kirk Cousins will do just enough to win games for Minnesota. The roster's pretty good, and I think Minnesota will make the playoffs this year in 2021.
Thank you so much for watching this video today. Please also note that the juiciest Sports Podcast is not just a YouTube channel. It is available on all podcasting platforms, including Spotify, Google Podcasts, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts. Also, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share this content with all your friends. This podcast is my favorite thing in the entire world right now. It is my passion. And I want more people to listen to this podcast. I really want this podcast to grow. Also, a fun fact about me is that I want to go into the sports broadcasting and media world once I graduate from the University of Toledo, a college in Northern Ohio. I am looking to become one of the next great sports broadcasters and analysts out in the world. And I potentially would like to start my own network if this podcast really truly grows. Or if I fall short of that goal, I would love to work for a big-time network like ESPN or Fox Sports 1. I am open to all networks. So if you believe in my dreams and you see or hear my passion through the screen, be sure to tell all your friends about the juiciest Sports Podcast. Stay motivated, you guys. Have a God bless day, and I'm out.